The Axial fog lights that we have here are a very cool product for all 2015 and newer F-150 owners who are looking to not only upgrade the appearance and output of those fog lights in your rig, but also add some integrated turn signals as well. Now the Axials will feature a black aluminum housing with the clear polycarbonate lens, and the dual function LEDs offer right around $100 for the pair. Installation will not involve any wiring or modification, and instead will be a complete plug and play job, so therefore expect a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and about an hour or so to complete from start to finish, as we'll demonstrate later in the video. So Axial is all about making lighting accessories to make your vehicle truly unique, and in this case, that is certainly valid. Now the unique aspect in the fog lights that we have here will be the fact that the Axials are going to transform your standard run-of-the-mill fogs into a dual purpose light. Half fog light, half turn signal, thanks to those dual function LEDs. So with that said, what do you say we break these things down a little bit further? Now on the surface, the Axials are going to start with an aluminum housing, which has been powder coated black and is topped off with that crystal clear polycarbonate lens, which will give the fogs a more sinister, almost smoke look when not in use. But inside that housing is what really is going to separate these lights from your standard run-of-the-mill fog lights, and that is the inclusion of the dual function LEDs. Now when the fog lights are switched on for normal use, they will illuminate a nice bright white light here thanks to those high-powered LEDs. Now this of course is great for increased visibility on those dark roads at night and so on. However, turn the fog lights off and then back on again, and that white light switches to an amber light, which will be great on those extra foggy mornings or days. Now furthermore here guys, due to the included electronics, the fog lights will also function as an additional turn signal indicator, flashing along with your standard headlight mounted turn signals or hazard lights. Now the fog lights are of course sold in sets of 2 and have been both DOT and SAE approved, making them legal for use in all 50 states. But maybe one of the best things about the added functionality here of the Axial fog lights is the fact that for the most part this is a plug and play job, no crazy modification needed. However, and I do want to make this perfectly clear, if you want those turn signals to function along with your factory turn signals once they have been switched on, you will need to run an additional wire to the headlight harness in your F-150 using this yellow spade connector. Not necessary, but again, the fog lights at that point will not function as a turn signal unless you do that step. On the other hand, if you just simply want to plug them in, they will still give you that dual color functionality thanks to everything that's included with this kit. But regardless, to give you a better idea of how the install is going to go down, here is our detailed walkthrough along with our quick tool breakdown. Check it out.
Tools used for this install are an impact gun, a ratchet, 21mm socket, 10mm socket, 8mm socket, 7mm socket, a small extension, some wiring, electrical tape and connectors, wire cutters and crimpers, a heat gun, flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and a clip removal tool. So for this install, in order to install the fog lights into our bumper, we're going to have to pull the front bumper off of the truck. The other thing we're going to have to do to complete the wiring portion of this is remove our headlight so that we can gain access to the turn signal wire that we have to tap into. Pretty simple process and minimal tools are required, and I'm going to walk you through it. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do before I get really started is unplug my fog lights, and then I'll move on to my lower grille so I can unbolt my bumper. Next thing I'm going to do is pull the cover off from my lower grille. That's going to give me access to these 21mm bolts that hold on the bumper. Now I can use a 21mm socket on my impact gun to remove the hardware for the bumper. So now that the front bumper is removed from the truck, I have access to remove and install my new fog lights. But the first thing I'm going to do is remove the trim piece around the headlight as well as the headlight itself in order to give me access to the wiring so that I can get to the turn signal wires. So to get the front fascia off that surrounds the headlight, I'm going to pull out the clip and 2 screws that are over here in the wheel well, and I'll use my clip tool and a 7mm socket to pull those off. Now I can just pull this headlight surround trim piece off, and that gives me access to my headlight hardware. Next, I'm just going to take a 10mm socket and remove all of the bolts that hold this lower trim bracket on for the headlight, and then I'll take out the headlight bolts themselves, which are also a 10mm bolt. You might need a short extension to get to the bolt that's next to the grill for the headlight, but you'll just need your 10mm as well. And you can unscrew that. And then 2 10mm bolts up the top. Now I can just unplug my headlight and remove it from the vehicle. Now I can just repeat the same removal process on the other side of the truck. So I've got the bumper up here on the table so that I can get really good access to my fog light housing. Now there's an adjuster screw with a spring that's right here. I'm going to remove that with a Phillips head screwdriver, and then I have to pop the tabs on either side of the fog light to remove the lens housing from the mounting bracket. Now I'm just going to take a small flathead screwdriver and pry the tabs very gently on the side of the fog light lens. And this should just get it to pop right out. All right, so now I can install my new fog light. I'll just thread my wire through the hole. And then I can just line up my tabs. And those pop right into place. And now I can install my new screw and spring for the adjustment. And then you can just repeat this process on the other side of the bumper. Once you have both fog lights installed into the bumper, we can move on to the wiring on the truck. We're going to have to tap into one of our turn signal wires and plug it into this provided spade connector that's on the end of the pigtail for the fog light itself. So in order for our fog light turn signal to get power, we are going to have to tap into the turn signal wire that is on the back of the headlight. I've determined that the yellow wire with the purple or brown tracer on this wire here is going to be what we're going to need to tap into. I'm actually going to do a permanent tap in, but something that I can also unplug should I ever have the need to. So I'll cut into this, I'll splice a wire off of it and run it down to my new fog light. In order to complete this portion of the installation, you are going to need a couple of female spade connectors and a few feet of a thin gauge wire. Because it's an LED, you don't have to go too crazy. And what you're going to do is basically run this length of wire down to your new fog light and plug it into the spade connector on the back. I'm also using a butt connector to tap into my line. However, if you're not going to do a permanent tap like I am, you won't need a butt connector. You can just use your regular wiring tools. Since I'm using a heat shrink butt connector, I'm just going to make sure that I apply a little bit of heat to make sure I get a good weather tight seal on my electrical connection. Once you've completed splicing into your wires on one side, you can repeat the process on the other side and then move on to reinstalling your headlights, reinstalling your bumper, and plugging them into your new fog lights, and you're all good to go. And now you just reinstall your headlight in the reverse order of removal. Now I can use my 10mm socket and reinstall my headlight hardware. Now I can reinstall my headlight trim fascia. I'll reinstall my 7mm screws. And now I can move on to the bumper. So I got an extra set of hands here to help me get this bumper lined up. We'll just line the studs up with the holes in the bumper, and then I'll put the nuts on. Once you have your bumper positioned properly, take your 21mm socket on your impact and tighten everything down. Now I can plug my fog lights back in and wrap this up. Now I'll just make my connections for my fog lights and we're all good to go. And that's going to wrap up this review and install of the Axial LED fog light with integrated turn signal fitting your 2015 to 2019 F-150. Thanks for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.